The University of Johannesburg is launching the Creative Microbiology Research Co-Lab aimed at incorporating microbiology in producing a creative work. The first of its kind on the African continent, the exhibition includes works by 9 artists and scientists. To tell us more about this groundbreaking event, I'm joined by Professor Leora Farber, who is the director of the VIAD Research Centre at UJ. Professor, very good afternoon. I suppose my first question is, are you an artist or are you a scientist?
I'm very much an artist. I come from the visual arts background, but the CoLab, the Creative Microbiology Research Co-Lab, is actually a collaboration between visual artists and microbiologists. So it is two directors of centres, my centre and the Centre for Water and Health, that we are forming this collaboration. And it's very exciting because it's quite an unusual combination of two different disciplines. You've got art and science, which are generally thought of to be very, very different.
Okay.
And, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you stole the words right out of my mouth when I was reading up on this. I thought to myself, well, biology and art don't often come together. Well, can you explain the concept of art, science and art, often represented as opposites, as I indicated? And let's talk about the link between the two, and certainly what motivated the University of Joburg to establish the Creative Microbiology Research Co-Lab.
I think it's a sense of adventure, a sense of innovation, what can be done that has not been done before, and particularly in this country, and the way in which disciplines are no longer discrete. So in other words, it's very much more productive, really, for one to work across disciplines, particularly those that are quite different, in order to come up with something creative and something quite new. This has been done, bioart has been done quite a lot in the UK, the US, and Australia, but it's a relatively unknown field here in South Africa. And so we are really embracing it as a new opportunity to see what can be done, but also what can be done in a South African context, in an African context as well.
Now, I can't quite visualize what bioart would be. So give us some typical pieces, if you will, if there are typical pieces.
There aren't really, but what the concept behind it is that artists are using what we call life, which is raw materials, raw matter, as medium and as subject matter. So in other words, I would be using something like bacteria to make a drawing, for example. So some of the work that you would see on the exhibition does involve, in fact, live bacteria. We have one of the works by my collaborator, Prof. Barnard, who has made hands out of bacterial agar and then is growing bacteria on them, and they will be growing throughout the duration of the exhibition. And obviously one can monitor their changes, how they grow, how they disintegrate, what happens during that process.
So, Professor, that would almost suggest that work of art would morph, if you will, into, I mean, you look at it in one form today, and a few days later, that piece of art is different. It's almost like live art, if you will.
Exactly. That's a very good way of putting it. Exactly. Yeah. What we're planning to do on that one is take stop frame animation shots so that we'll have a record of the actual decay of the bacteria or the growth of the bacteria as it happens.
Now, in the press release, it mentions that bioart encourages transdisciplinary creativity. Unpack for us that rather long word, if you will.
It goes back to what we were speaking about just now, differences between disciplines, and sometimes that those disciplines are seen as really completely separate from each other. Art and science being one of them. Science always being known as the factual, the data, the finding out of the evidence, whereas art is sort of known as the creative process, making something that you don't know how it's going to turn out. So this is a very interesting combination. So it crosses the two disciplines, but it is a combination that you don't always know what's going to happen. So a scientist might be able to say, okay, the bacteria are going to do X, Y, and Z. But when I work with it as an artist, it's often that you have no idea what the bacteria are going to do. So it's, again, I think what I'm stressing here is that it's about the unknown. It's about charting quite unknown territory. A lot of it is about experimentation, about risk, and in a way that's kind of opposite to what science does. Science is looking for fact, whereas we're looking for new discoveries, new processes, new ideas. What can come out of this productive relationship between the two disciplines?
Dare I ask, when we talk about biology, a lot of it is about human biology, and obviously it will talk to animals in the same breath. So let's talk about human beings and potentially bodies of those that are deceased or whatever, or limbs and so on. Do these make up part of that art, and how does it all come together, if it does?
One can use, the body can be used in terms of tissue cells, stem cells. At the moment, with our research co-lab, we're not going into that, as it's a specialized field. But yes, it can be used. There's also ways of processing skin out of those cells. So one could use the body in that way. But I think our real interest is about using the human body, or looking at the human body, not as separate from organic matter. So in other words, you've got your plant life, you've got your bacterial life, you've got viruses, you've got microbes. All of those live inside us, actually. Particular bacteria make up 90% of our bodies. So in working with bacteria, you are in fact working with your body as a material. Yeah, so we're looking at dissolving that disconnection that people have, thinking human beings are human beings and plant matter or other living or non-stroke living materials are not human. And looking at the fact that we are in fact enmeshed together and that we live together symbiotically, and breaking down those boundaries between human and human being privileged and set as higher than the natural world or plant matter or non-stroke, non-living materials. So in other words, what we're actually saying is that the plant world, the non-stroke living world, the material matter, and us as humans are one and the same. And, you know, it's a way of encouraging a thought around changing the perception, I suppose, of viruses, of bacteria, mainly of bacteria. You know, when people hear these words, I think it induces a great deal of fear. You know, people are immediately, oh gosh, COVID, and, you know, this is the enemy, and we are going, you know, these are not friendly to the human body.
You'd obviously get a lot of conservative people that will not readily take it up. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the uptake. You mentioned that this is big elsewhere across the world. It's only just catching on in South Africa. Now, let's talk about not just uptake within South Africa, but uptake within the industry, if you will, or certainly when you start speaking to chemists and biophysicists and other scientists, you know, what is their uptake? Because obviously you're an artist, you're a creative, so for you it's nothing new. But you know, when you talk about actual fact, as you indicated, versus the creative, is there a big uptake? Are there any fears, any sentiments expressed by your colleagues that you've spoken to?
From my colleagues, I've had nothing but absolute support, which has been really amazing. But I do know of instances in Australia, for example, where similar kinds of collaborations and similar kinds of centres or institutes have had enormous resistance from their universities, from the institute, and on many levels. The resistance has come just from a pure kind of, you know, skepticism or like, what is this kind of thing? Or maybe from an ethical perspective, that the university might not feel comfortable in dealing with live matter. So yes, But I really feel privileged, and I feel very, very appreciative of the University of Johannesburg and of my colleagues in the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture for giving me such amazing support and allowing this to actually happen. It's been 3 years in the making, and I think we are very proud to say we now have our own bio-art laboratory, which is in the Art and Design building, and it is a dedicated laboratory where artists and microbiologists will be working together to produce unknown outcomes.
Well, let's talk about the exhibition proper, and obviously for those that are looking to participate, coming in and see what's being displayed, where can they come to you? When does it start? When does it end?
Well, the opening is on Thursday night. It's the 20th of July. It's 6:30 for 7, and it's at the Farber Gallery, F-A-D-A Gallery, which is in the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture building at University of Johannesburg, and it's the Bunting Road campus. If you'd like more information, one can go to www.viad.co.za. And really, I would encourage everybody to come to the opening. It's going to be quite spectacular. It is free. You don't need to RSVP. There's no payment involved. And then the exhibition runs until the 19th of August. So if you miss the opening, one can come at another time. We'll also be having a public program of artist walkabouts, where we will be interacting with the audience or people that come around and speaking about the works. And we're also planning panel discussions, a series of lectures, and other kinds of conversations around this quite new endeavor in South Africa.
And finally, Professor, before we let you go, let's talk about growth of bio-art in South Africa. Obviously exhibiting in Johannesburg. Where else do you intend to take it across the country?
That's a very good question. We have been really wanting to take it to Cape Town. I think that the National Gallery in Cape Town would be an ideal space to show the work, but it would also be really, really wonderful if this work could travel to more, provinces across South Africa, because it really is quite a special show. It features international and national artists, but all of us are members of the Creative Microbiology Lab. So we would love to travel the show, but of course, funding and finances do play a part in that.
Professor Leora Farber, appreciate your time this afternoon speaking to us about bio-art and the mix with microbiology. We certainly hope that it spreads across the country.